Funding for this video is brought to you in part by Luisa and from viewers like you. Thank you. What's up, folks, and welcome to the video, and welcome on back to this cozy corner of the internet. If you happen to be fresh meat, welcome on by. Hi, my name is Allie, and around these parts we balance daily life alongside disability, celebrate mundanity, and read a whole lot of books. And we are staying so true to that last bit today because we are discussing everything that I read in the last chunk of the year. So we've got quite a bit of books because this is everything that has been read from like end of August to beginning of December. There's 27 in my stack, or I guess on my list. They're still on the bookshelves. We're gonna have to rip them off ourselves. Speaking of, some of my decorations are amuck. Much better. We have some catch up to do today, baby. But first, let's hear it from today's sponsor, who is none other than Luisa, a sustainable online jewelry company who has been solely responsible for decorating my body for the past like 2 years. Now I know I don't gotta remind you that it's holiday time, you know. There's a good chance you are already stressing about what to get the people that you love in your life. And I'm here to remind you that you can get your favorite folks something sparkly and save a butt ton of money while doing so. Stress no more. There are some 6 seasonal discounts happening right as we speak. So you can gift something thoughtful, eye-catching, and classic without breaking the bank. And we can sit here and go on and on about the many wonderful components of this company. Like, they're carbon neutral, they have neat pieces made from recycled glass, their diamonds are lab grown, which makes them cruelty free, but also they're just timeless pieces, so you or whoever you gift will be wearing their jewelry for years to come. My favorite thing to do is to gift myself and a friend or family member a matching piece of jewelry, and then it makes the piece all the more special. For a little inspiration, allow me to show you the 3 necklaces that I recently selected from them. The first one being this Emma necklace. I think it's so fun. I can't wait to wear this holiday season. You might need to put some sunglasses on for this next one, folks. Let's take a gander at this May necklace. It's this lovely little crescent moon hugging this beautiful opal circle. I'm wearing it right now. So magical. And finally, my most worn piece from Luisa over the years is this Libra pendant necklace. And they have new astrology necklaces, which I think would make great sibling or BFF gifts. They're these super minimal symbols, and I naturally got the Libra one because my birthday is at the start of October. So if you would like any of these pieces or to choose from their wide selection online, you can click the link in the description box below. Save so much money and redeem all of the perks. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's video, Luisa. Now, let's get back to the books. 27 books, that's quite the stack, but you know we gotta go over our 3 quick disclaimers. Number 1, do not compare yourself to anyone in any realm of life, but especially when it comes to reading. Especially do not compare yourself to anyone whose job it is to read books and make content online about them. Amounts don't matter, cannot emphasize that enough. As long as you're reading, you're winning. 2, if I loved a book that you hated or hated a book that you loved, that's not a personal attack. We all look for different things when it comes to ink on paper, and that is celebrated in this house. And 3, please check any and all content warnings for any books. If you have any sensitivities, there's no shame in that. Take care of yourself. Okay, I'm gonna start off with the books that I read for the Reading Booktuber's Favorite Books video, and we're gonna rip off the band-aid and immediately confess that I DNF'd Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a historical fantasy brought to us by the writer who brought us the Poppy War. I know that it's such a sin to say that I couldn't get into this one to save my life. I know that. I know because I have been in Booktuber jail for the past like 3 months, and I do believe I'm serving 20 years to life. Something that you've already heard on this channel before and you're going to hear more than once in this video is that I'm just not the biggest typical fantasy reader. I want to be a fantasy girly. I am just simply not. I like very short, very low stakes, no plot, just vibes, not convoluted kind of fantasy. And this book was so convoluted, which doesn't make it objectively bad. It just makes it not my thing. I'm just always catching myself while I'm reading a standard fantasy, reading a page, but I'm not absorbing any of the information. My eyes just glaze over. I'm just witnessing words. So please take my review for this book with a grain of salt, because I don't know what I'm talking about. This story follows a boy who's taken from his home country to go study languages at Oxford. And it's got some strong themes surrounding colonialism and racism. However, if the fantasy lore alone was not enough to take me out of this book, the complex and ever-frequent references to language and deep conversations about grammar and linguistics and footnotes about all of that, oh my god, I wasn't just 1 foot out of the story, I was drop-kicked into a different dimension. And I had such high hopes for this one. I didn't just pick it up because I was told to by the internet. I had this book pre-ordered. I was so ready for it to be a new favorite. It just wasn't for me is all. I get why everybody likes it, and I'm sorry that I didn't. Up next we read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. And this book is a living reminder. Well, it's not alive. I just personify inanimate objects. It's a reminder that we need to keep reading in genres that we don't typically gravitate towards, because I firmly believe that all genres can hold books that we can all enjoy. Like, if you're not a poetry person, I still believe that there's a poem or 2 or 3 that you can connect with. If you're not a nonfiction reader, there's gotta be a subject that will make you change your mind even for 1 book. And aside from being not the biggest fantasy reader, I'm also not the biggest serious romance reader. I prefer my romance to either not exist in a book or to just be a small B plot. However, this book has me reconsider it. It follows Daniel and Alex, who are a super unlikely pairing because Alex is this wonderful, kind of very rich medical prodigy, hardworking, hustle girl boss girly, and Daniel is this slow-living small town man who does woodworking, has a pet baby goat, that type of thing. First of all, this book had me feeling like a teenage girl kicking my feet and hee-heeing. I was literally blushing at the flirting that never happens. And it also had some seriously strong themes as well, which I was not expecting, which is fine. Like, sometimes you just want to have a romp and some spice and dip out. That's allowed. But this just had some substance that I was not expecting. I walked away reminded about how keeping your true priorities aligned gives you a clear path to do your best good possible, and how love can provide a pedestal for you to be your best self. Also, I'm sorry, featuring how class affects one's access to healthcare and calling it what it is, a privilege that we all deserve. Hello? Yes! All of the characters popped off the page here. I was even laughing from time to time. The penguin rocks, the sexual selfie, Alex's speech towards the end, like, this book was good. I was not expecting to walk away from a book that had a cartoon couple on the cover. So blown away, but I was. So don't let this fool you if you typically shy away from books that look like this. She's not like other girls. Loved it. Now, the next booktubers made me do it read was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which is a pretty long science fiction. This isn't typically a genre I gravitate towards either. That vlog was full of challenges. This one immediately piques your interest. You start the book off with our protagonist who is just regaining consciousness on a ship, balls deep in space, and he doesn't remember his name, how he got there, why he's there, none of it. But he's the only one alive on this spaceship. And so without any way to connect back to Earth, he is meant to put the pieces together and complete this crucial mission to save his home planet. There's a development that happens at the midway point of this book that completely changes the flavor and direction of the story in the best way possible. It is a little convoluted with the sciencey mumbo jumbo, but even if you can't keep up with all of that, you can still enjoy the story thoroughly. There was so much more to the story and the character development and the themes that I felt fine not knowing what the heck was going on with the math. There was so much to grab hold of, and Rocky is one of my favorite characters of 2023, hands down. So to me, the story was entertaining and meaningful. It had some sweeter moments, but also some serious suspense. It had me gasping. This was a wild ride. I had a great time with this one. Up next from that very same vlog was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu, which is a collection of short, dystopic, speculative fiction stories. Each one takes place in the same universe, just a different point in the timeline of said universe, follows different characters, but they're all intertwined in such an impressive way. Essentially, this collection shows a possible future of absolute climate catastrophe. The ice caps have melted and have unleashed some very seriously horrific diseases that triggered widespread devastation and suffering to the planet. The takeaway lessons from this one really struck a chord with me, like how humans are able to endure a seemingly unbearable amount of suffering. And not only was that hopeful, but also harrowing, you know, like life goes on, but also, life just goes on. The second story is going to stick with me for years to come. In the end, I do think that this would have been strengthened had we shaved off some of the stories and characters and really just focused on a select few and made it a regular novel, because the writing was really great, the themes were really great. It was seriously impressive. Just to me personally, the genre weakened it ever so slightly, but that's really my only complaint here. I still walked away thoroughly pleased. And the final booktubers made me do it book was Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. This is a literary fiction that follows a serial killer counting down the hours until his execution, and then bounces to the perspective of the many women whose lives were impacted by his existence and crimes. But it's mostly about those women, which I think strengthened the book as a whole. Where to even begin with this one? The writing in here was insane to me. Just so out of this world, so good. It reminded me of those people who have such a way with words that you have no choice but to lean in and savor every single word. I was completely enveloped in this prose the entire time, start to finish. I read it in one day without even trying. It had so much to say about morality and circumstances. You're gonna walk away from this one with the whole nature versus nurture debate rattling in your skull for a while after closing it. And despite the fact that this is some pretty heavy material, I thought that it was handled very carefully. This was just done so well. It's definitely a favorite from this year. Spoiler alert. So good. Now, something that I am so excited that I got to get into these past few months is the Moomin series, and I recently picked up The Moomins and the Great Flood and Comet in Moominland, the first and the second book from the 9-chapter books that are on the market right now. These are short, cozy fantasy children's Finnish stories from the 1940s. But luckily for us, they've been translated by David Macduff, so us English speakers can enjoy them to this day. I really don't know what else to say except for I really enjoyed reading these. It felt like bedtime story time, returned me to my childhood roots. It was delightful. And it's not the first time nor the last time I'm gonna say this. I highly encourage that if you're an adult, that you still return to the genre of children's or middle grade, because there are so many great life lessons in there that might seem simple and basic on paper, but it's so easy to forget them as we grow older. So revisit your favorite tales. And that being said, please tell me which books from the children's and middle grade genre are your favorites because I'm always looking for more. Okay, we discussed a lot of books that we loved. Now it's time to go over some disappointments. One of them was Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh. The premise sounded so good. It reminded me of Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, which is such a good book. It got me into reading Schweblin's discography, and I really just thought that this could be a new favorite as well, but it just missed the mark for me in many different ways. It's a historical fiction about a mass poisoning that happened in France in the 1950s, and this is a me problem, but I personally am not the biggest spicy, sexy reader, and to me there was just way too much of that featured in this book, and just the way that all of it was told overall just led to a very forgettable reading experience for me. There were some really nice poetic lines from time to time. I do have some tabs in here. I just never found myself falling into it. Not for me. Another recent disappointment for me was Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. And this isn't a disappointment in the sense that I think it's a 1-star book. It's more so just that I thought it would be a favorite and it was just okay. Because in September of 2021, we read Pew in the Pocket Pages, which is the book club for this channel. We read one book a month and discuss in a temporary Discord server, so you don't have to be available for any live streams. Time zones cannot stop us. Join us if you'd like. We have a lot of fun. But 2 years ago, we read Pew by Catherine Lacey. I loved it so much, and so I thought 2 years later in the very same month, we could dive into her most recently published thing. It's a literary historical fiction that follows a grieving woman after the death of her wife X, who was this infamous, artistic, mysterious woman. Her grieving wife realizes that she basically knew nothing about the woman she married, and so the entire book is just her navigating X's past and learning all of her secrets and talking to old friends and family members and uncovering the many secret identities that she had throughout her years. Half of my issues with this book are a me thing. I'm willing to admit that. I really don't like reading about famous people. I don't really like rags to riches storylines. I just don't really care about the pretentious art world. I just struggled with caring about X as a character here, and seeing as the entire book was about X, it made the reading experience a bit of a chore. However, the themes were so strong in this one. Themes about story and personhood, honesty and the con, and there were so many lines that I tabbed. I liked it fine enough. Like, to me, this is an objectively good book. It's well crafted. Incredible writing and lessons, just the characters and the narrative lacked for me personally. Mixed feelings, but not all bad. I also read In the Company of Witches by Oralee Wallace. This is the first of the two in the Evanfall Witches Airbnb duology. I wonder if it will become 3 books. That would be nice because I really enjoyed my time here. When I say I'm not a fantasy reader, like I said, I mean standard run-of-the-mill adventure fantasy, but a cozy fantasy? Sign me up 10 times. This is a magical cozy mystery that is as if Gilmore Girls had a baby with Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I admire this book's ability to have a literal murder in it, but to still never get stressful really at any point. How did a book with this subject matter remain so low stakes? With also some great themes. You get the whole bucket of experiences here. I love books that highlight the importance and power of community, and this one did that through the theme of the helping others is healing philosophy, which I also love. And damn, reading this was healing to me, Oralee Wallace. This helped me. Thank you. You really just bop around this cozy autumnal town and talk to all the kooky characters to get to the bottom of the crime that befell the Airbnb that these 3 witches run. It also covered grief in such a lovely way, which I was not expecting at all. Like, I really liked it. I also read Daphne by Josh Malerman. Now, this is a horror book about a group of high school sporty gals who are slowly dying one by one because they live in this town that is haunted by this girl who was murdered in the past, and if you ever think about her or talk about her, she gets you. Like, I hate that idea because I'm an anxious person myself, and the second you tell me not to think about something, I will be thinking about it. Did this haunt me a little bit? Like, I would be brushing my teeth and then I would start thinking about Daphne, and then I would like want to hit my head to physically remove the thought so then she wouldn't come for me? Yes. This was my first Josh Malerman, and I have pretty mixed emotions overall. I really hated the ending slash conclusion slash how the conflict was resolved. I also thought that the pacing wasn't the best, and I caught my eyes glazing over a lot during the formative plot building moments just to get to the spooky parts, because the plot moments were very repetitive. But those spooky parts really did get me. They really did. I read this one in a reading vlog, and it spooked me. I am a big baby. It's very easy to scare me, but that doesn't make it any less true. I also thought that the themes were quite nice, like having Daphne be an allegory for anxiety, showing that vicious cycle of how being told to calm down or not think about something is literally useless. If you are plagued with something, it's gonna be plaguing you. And that was so cool to see in a book, and honestly aided in the spooky factor. And despite the pacing not even being that great, it was still so chronically readable. Like, there are no chapters in this book. That is unheard of. Criminal even, but somehow it didn't slow me down even a little bit. I read it in like one day. So even though I walked away from this book not being its biggest fan ever, I will still read more from Josh Malerman, I think. So please let me know which of his books were your favorite. Oh, I gotta take a break. Please hold. I forgot what I was talking about. Please tell me what your favorite Josh Malerman is. That sounds about right. What are you doing? I love you so much. Now, I recently discovered a whole new genre for me personally, and that is called cozy manga. And I started this journey by reading Hakumi and Mikochi Tiny Life in the Woods by Takuto Kishiki, translated by Taylor Angle. Would you just look at these two books? Are these not the coziest things you have ever seen? So these are just mangas with no stakes, no stress, just cute, foresty, tiny friendship fun. These two woodland spirit pals live together and cook together and ride bugs as a means of transportation together. They're so small that when they hold a blueberry, it's like this. Within the first few pages of the first book, they had already given minestrone soup to a bird, and I was sold immediately. Like, they have a friend in the forest who reassembles and reanimates the skeletons of animals to befriend them and do tasks together and just hang out. Even though it's all in black and white, I still want to eat every piece of food that is mentioned and featured here, which is my really only complaint, is that it's in black and white, aside from the fact that there was a page in the second one where a character asked one of the protagonists if she was married to her roommate, and instead of just saying, "Oh no," she said, "But I'm a girl." Womp womp. But aside from that, I have no other complaints thus far. I love this series so much and I cannot wait to read more from them. Now, something I loved a little less so was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Speaking of womp womp, this is a YA paranormal horror about this group of high school friends, particularly the two best friends, Abby and Gretchen. And they've been buds since they were teeny tiny, but one day, unfortunately, Gretchen gets possessed by a demon. Womp womp, part 3. Now, I loved the first third of this book. Writing these two best friends, how they got to know each other, and the memories that formed their friendship. Like, in the beginning, I really cared about these two girls and I had such high hopes for the rest of the book, but then it just fell off the wagon completely for me. Now, there were a lot of things that the characters were saying that were super dated, and that's arguably unnecessary. Like, you can say that that's how people talked in the 80s, but I guess. But there were also things that weren't dialogue that rubbed me the wrong way. We talked about this in the reading vlog. What I did like about this book was its commentary on class. Like, our protagonist is not as wealthy as not only her best friend, but everyone in this town. And those power dynamics really play a key role in how the rest of the story pans out. Said panning out is also one of my complaints because it was so exhausting to follow Abby as she bounces between this wealth of rich adults begging for help, and they're all useless and annoying. That really made it so it was never really spooky or thrilling to me. It was just tedious. This just didn't work for me in so many ways. I wasn't scared, I wasn't invested, and so I don't think I will be reading any more from this author. I don't think we are the most compatible as writer and reader, and that's fine. This is easily one of the best cover designs I've ever seen. Like, it looks like a VHS tape, so I'm extra bummed that I didn't love this one. But some of my favorite books from this past month were... Oh no, I'm too short. Also, Daphne is still out. Oh no, I'm too short.
Thank you all. Your love has broken the curse and freed my soul. I'll never have to kill again.
Oh, did you hear my shoulder pop? Lawrence! Say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
Bye.
Have fun. Bye.
I love love. Anyway, the Lightfall series by Tim Probert. This is Lightfall, the Girl in the Galdurian, and Shadow of the Bird. I love these so much. These are cozy graphic novels, but they have some stakes. Like, there's an adventure here, there's some suspense here. You get a little stressed out here. So if you like soft atmospheres and solid friendships, but you do not like the no plot, just vibes books, read these. We follow Bee, who is an adopted human by the pig wizard, and she befriends a Galdurian, which is a species that everybody thought didn't exist anymore, and the two of them become unlikely friends and embark on an adventure together to find the pig wizard and save the light. The art style and color palette of these were just so well done, in my opinion. Like, every page was a boost of serotonin to my brain. I also particularly appreciated the representation of anxiety here. Bee is a warrior, and Cal the Galdurian is like a golden retriever type, and so they make such a great pairing. It was healing to identify with Bee, but to learn from Cad. These two were both just so comforting, and they were paced well. It felt like watching a movie. Definitely a favorite graphic novel series, and I will be pre-ordering the third one when it comes out next year. Speaking of, let me know if y'all would be interested in knowing some 2024 anticipated releases that I have, because I think I'm going to make a video about that. Thoughts and plans? Can I put them back? Yeah. Woo! Next, Chlorine by Jade Song. This is another book that we read for the Pocket Pages book club, and it is a shorter literary horror about a high school girl who's in a competitive swim team, but she is completely convinced that she is actually a mermaid. I would categorize this one under the girls are gross, unhinged woman kind of book, except here we have a teenage girl from an immigrant household, which made the rage and unraveling all the more palpable. We also have so few books in this canon with characters that aren't white women in their 20s, so that was a breath of fresh air in and of itself. And also I thought that the themes were damn good. Immigration and of being othered, the trials and tribulations of girlhood, and the art of self-mutilation in order to achieve self-preservation. I liked this one a lot. Not everyone in the book club did, which is fair and valid, but it did it for me personally. Twisted coming-of-age stories almost never not get me, especially ones that don't fully make sense. You know, you walk away without all your questions answered, you're left to fill in the gaps yourself with your own hypotheses. I also liked how this one showed the unraveling that unfolds after experiencing trauma, both psychologically but also like a physical injury, physical trauma, and how that unraveling is exacerbated when that trauma prevents you from being who you usually are, and it prevents you from being able to participate in the healthy activities that maintain your selfhood. Plus, that scene in the locker room towards the end is going to be burned into my brain until the end of my days, and I think the same is true for a lot of you. So thank you for enduring this fun with me online as friends. The next book we also read together, and it was Where They Burn Books, They Also Burn People by Marcos Antonio Hernandez. This was our November book club pick, and it is a dual timeline story that shines light on Catholicism's shadowed past. The first part of the two takes place in the 1940s as 9 friars arrive to the New World in order to spread Catholicism to the indigenous Mayan community, and the second part takes place in the 2010s with some dude named Cortez who is creepily obsessed with his local barista for being nice to him one time, and also he loves God too, I guess. The title is solid, the cover is off the charts, the premise is so promising, but for me and everyone who read this book, we unanimously decided that the execution needed some work. We all thought that this could benefit greatly from some serious editing. It was pretty overwritten and difficult to follow, and we all sort of agreed, myself included, that Cortez in the second book was autistic coded, but in a damaging way. There were some interesting parallels between the two stories. Like, I got a kick out of finding each character's mirror character. There were themes and visual motifs that were carried out through both stories, and that was pretty cool. But my personal favorite part was how the author showed the psyche of the colonizer, like how they really believe they're doing the right thing and how they're liberating these people from an evil in their minds despite the literal crimes against humanity that they are befalling onto all of them in order to get money, control land, etc. To see those mental gymnastics, to have our protagonists not be the good guy, that was a pretty creative choice in my opinion. It highlighted how colonization and its methods have really not changed throughout history. The quote, "You have loud footsteps" for someone who doesn't know where they're going, so good. I appreciate those of you who gave it a shot with me so we could detangle all of our thoughts and feelings about it together, you know, to get what we could out of its pages. It's just always nice to read with friends on the internet.com. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Up next, I read The Myth of Normal by Gabriel Mate and his son Daniel Mate. This is a nonfiction all about trauma and stress and how those two things affect the body in physical ways, and how if those things are not addressed properly, they can manifest into chronic illness. It is so long, and I technically read it from May until November because in the beginning it was so well written and validating and informative that it actually hurt me a bit. It made me a little bit discouraged. But if you do choose to pick it up, I urge you to continue with it because it does get hopeful at the end. There's a lot of great theories and exercises and helpful calls to action. It's not just, if you ever experience trauma, your life is gonna suck forever. Hey, I promise, it gets better. This is just chock full of crucial information. I would have put a tab on every page, maybe even multiple tabs per page if I could. This is the type of book that you would be assigned a chapter or two in a college class to analyze and dissect for an entire semester and write a paper on it. So not only a book that should be read more than once, but I want to read more than once. I was so blown away with this. It shines light on modern medicine's abundant failures, how toxic individualism that's been normalized in the Western world, thanks to good old-fashioned capitalism working as intended, how all of those things join forces and just deteriorate us from the inside out. There were some things that I'm questioning, maybe don't fully agree with, but I just want to chew on and process and, like I said, definitely revisit. So I will be shelving this in my office as such a useful tool. One of my favorite books of the year, spoiler alert part 2. Next, Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, translated by Elizabeth Jacquet. This is a historical literary fiction that takes place in 1949 Palestine and then decades later. So we follow two characters in two different timelines. In the first one, IDF soldiers capture and commit horrific crimes to a young woman, and then in the present day, that woman learns about the crimes and becomes obsessed with learning all of the details to get to the bottom of it. I said on the vlog where I read this that it was written so well that it also makes it all the more difficult to read. And despite it being short, it just packs such a serious punch and shines light on living under occupation. The title and the central theme on focusing on the minor details or the personal experiences and stories when looking at history couldn't have been more poignantly or poetically done. I was heartbroken and endlessly impressed with this one. I also read Please Do Not Not Touch This Exhibit by Jen Campbell. This is a short poetry collection that was sent to me by Jen's publisher, and I was so excited because this is a collection all about mythologizing trauma and disability, which is just so far up my alley. And even though I'm not the biggest poetry understander yet, you know, my level is kind of low, I was still very much able to enjoy this one. I loved the reoccurring motifs throughout and how all the themes weaved together. It was so vulnerable and honest, and to me had the perfect balance of relatable but entirely unique. I like how she included the correspondence between her doctors and how she used animal imagery to describe her alopecia. And even though it is such a short read, I think it did a good job at exploring personhood while having a disability, which is one of my favorite things to explore in a book. So thank you, Blood X Books. I liked this one. I also technically read The Self-Care Year by Allison Davies, even though this is technically not a book that you're meant to like sit down and read from cover to cover, but I wanted a color code and tab and understand everything that was inside so then I could incorporate these habits into my 2024. This is essentially a super surface level, non-derogatory, I say that as in it's great for beginners, book about slow, soft habits that you can incorporate into your seasonal rituals to just do some nice little self-care things and be more in tune with yourself and the world and nature and all that jazz. All the 4 seasons are broken down, and you know, you've got a yoga pose or 2 assigned to each one, some sense, how to switch up your nighttime routine to better fit the season, that type of thing. This is just a sweet little resource and I can't wait to start using it. I also read Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, which is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, which was one of my favorite books from last year. Now, I'm never somebody who reads something and then wishes that I had a prequel to it. So really, that's my biggest complaint here. Within this one, our protagonist Orc Viv sustains an injury while fighting a necromancer, and then she has to take some forced time off, and she does so in a beach-fronted little village. And she frequents the bakery, and she heals her leg, and she goes to the bookstore, and it's so cozy and so sweet. The ratkin in the bookshop suggests books for her to read, and then she talks about the books in the village, and I really liked that theme of how books and stories can bring together a community that's very relatable here. Also, as a chronically ill, chronic pain person, I loved seeing how positive escapism can be when you are forced to be bedridden. That was beautiful. It had a pretty similar vibe to Legends and Lattes, with the whole, you know, taking a scrungly business and giving it a glow up into a lush and cozy place of patronage. I don't think that the characters quite flew off the page like they did in Legends and Lattes, and I did get a little lost at some points in the middle. It slowed down and I got a little confused like what we were doing and why, but I'm still just a sucker for no plot just vibes books, so I still left this one satisfied enough. I really hope we get a second one from the Legends and Lattes series, and hey, now if we do, we have more characters to check in on, and that'll be nice. I liked it. But if you want to know a book that I love, then we gotta talk about What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu. This is an excellent companion read to The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, in my opinion, because this is Stephanie's memoir all about her getting her complex post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis and discovering what that means for her and revisiting her past to understand herself better and the many different therapeutic practices and activities that she tries. I appreciate her sharing this story and writing this book and revisiting her chaotic and dangerous past, because this was vulnerable and educational and just damn helpful. I find it very healing to read from folks' experiences that fall into the hurt people phrase, because I love to see how we can transform from that version of ourselves to return to who we really are. Like through trauma, a pained, traumatized version of ourselves kind of grabs hold of the ropes because they're trying to protect us, essentially. That's what a trauma response is. It's a survival technique. And so damn, it is so therapeutic to read about people who can face that messier version of themselves, thank it for what it's trying to do, and regain hold of their ropes again. You know, seeing people return to safety, not just literally and physically or in their circumstances, but psychologically, it's good. It's really, really good. This was also just so readable. It was the perfect balance of personal experience and information surrounding this diagnosis. One of my favorite memoirs for sure. All right, just a couple left. Up next, we have Before We Say Goodbye by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, translated by Jeffrey Trusselot. This is the 4th installment in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. I read all 4 within the past year, so you probably are familiar with this concept. Cozy Cafe gives its patrons the ability to travel through time and relive a little experience with someone that matters to them. So heartwarming, celebrates the many ways that humans can love each other. I'm strapped in for the ride. This one, as you saw in our last reading vlog, made me sob like an ugly, ugly baby because there was a chapter about a dog. That's f***ed up, Toshikazu. How dare you? Now, unfortunately, I thought that the rest of the stories in this book were pretty lackluster. However, each chapter still just always has a line that I can pocket and learn from. There's always a moment that really tugs at my heartstrings, even if I think that they are not as strong as their counterparts. But I didn't feel like there was a central theme in this one like there are with the other ones. There either wasn't one or we were just revisiting and recycling past ones. And this kind of made the repetitive writing style, you know, continuously reminding you of the rules of the cafe, really stand out, which was definitely a bummer. But I'm still totally going to continue with the series. Plus, it's a book that respects your time. I can't wait for the 5th one. Like, I love this series. I then read The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty with a friend, and thank goodness I did, and I will let you know why. This is just another example of it's not you, it's me. It is 100% me. It's not that this is a bad fantasy, I am just bad at reading fantasy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story follows retired pirate Amina, who is kind of in hiding but is immediately found within the first chapter and is kind of blackmailed / hired to save this woman's grandkid. And so she gathers the troops, you know, the people who she usually goes on her seafaring missions with, to do one last adventure. There's a diverse band of characters, which we love to see, and also Amina and all of her shipmates are middle-aged, and I just personally love to read books from different age groups, so that was great too. I also loved the themes surrounding gender, and I wish we got even more from that so bad. This one really got me thinking why it is that I struggle with this genre so much, because I want to like it so badly. And I think the thing is that I'm simply biting off more than I can chew, because the fantasies that I have enjoyed, like Pendragon for example, these are for children, and they're also not fully fantasy. I think my top tier favorite fantasies is actually Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and those are YA. So I think perhaps I'm just not quite at the adult fantasy reading level yet. I think I just got lucky with the Poppy War, you know, because there was a lot that I didn't understand, but I think conveniently the things that I didn't catch weren't crucial to the story. Like, I think I just lucked out there. Because like I said before, my eyes glaze over while I'm reading fantasy. There's just so much to take in that my brain puts up a wall and refuses to let anything in. So much so that I completely missed that this book changes perspectives in the last 3 pages despite being from the same perspective for the entire book. And so I missed the most crucial character development for my favorite character. That just shows that it's a me problem. I am the flaw in this operation. Thank God I was buddy reading this so my friend could lead me in the right direction, but my point here is, once again, my review means nothing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have no idea what I'm doing, because I am a short, slow fantasy reader and this is a long, high-stakes fantasy book. I was trying to squish a square block into a round hole. That's on me. I am determined to find fantasy books that are compatible with my reading skills. I am afraid that this is not quite it, so I will not be continuing the series personally, but I can totally see why this book has all the hype that it has. It was definitely one of the better fantasies that I have read. And last but not least, we have our Pocket Pages book club book for the month of December. The chat for it opens in just 5 days by the time of this going live, and it is A Man Called Ova by Fredrik Backman. I cannot wait to read everyone's thoughts because this book was lovely. It's just a seemingly simple story about a curmudgeon-y old man, but ends up saying so much about human purpose and belonging. It's not only a series of unfortunate events, but also a series of beautifully mundane events, much like life itself. You get all the ingredients in your soup. Slurp slurp. This book reminded me that people need you. The world needs us. There's so much good that we can do for people in our direct circles, like our neighbors, for example. That may seem like small things, but the impact goes beyond what we can even comprehend. The central theme of finding where you're useful and that being interwoven with the necessity of community is just so beautiful. Like, if you're somebody that loves found family stories, and also if you love that scene from How the Grinch Stole Christmas where his heart grows so big that it explodes out of the little cage, then you should not be sleeping on this book anymore. This was just such a heartwarming reading experience, and I'm glad we read it together, and I cannot wait to talk about it. Okay, we did it. We covered all the books. I would love to know what you read in December, if you have any favorites, if you have any books that you hated so much you hope that nobody ever picks one up and opens it or reads it, ever. You can share any and all feelings in the comments down below. My TBR is never not growing because of y'all. In fact, one of my favorite books of the year is entirely because of strangersontheinternet.com, so just goes to show that not only do I read your comments, but I take them to heart. I trust your opinions greatly. Thank you so much for reading with me in this cozy corner of the internet this year. Speaking of cozy corner of the internet, thank you so much to everyone on patreon.com who make it possible for us to do what we do here. Y'all are the bread and butter of this operation. I appreciate you endlessly. If you'd like to join the book club, get funky fresh downloadables and so much more, that will be linked down below. Speaking of links down below, thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring today's video. If you want to save mad bucks, get some jewelry for your loved ones, that is linked below as well. I'm gonna get going. I'm hoping for some more frequent reading reviews next year so we don't have almost 30 to cover in one sitting. That's stressful. I'm just hoping for more frequent videos in general in 2024. My health is looking up, things are looking up Millhouse. I'm feeling good and excited about it. But for now, I will see you on the 31st of December with the best books of 2023. Are you excited? I'm so excited. Over 120 were read. We're picking from the cream of the crop. It's gonna be grand. And as always, thank you for clicking, thank you for caring, and thank you for being nice. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!